Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to be talking about the one, the only Zebec network. Now, you know me, I'm super high on Zebec. I do believe it is going to be one of the best projects to be holding, for the 2026 altcoin season. We talked about and analyzed all of these other videos, right? Sorry, not videos. We analyzed all of the news that has come out regarding for Zbek. And yeah, man. I mean, Zbek has just been on a roll. They do massive update after massive update, and it's really exciting, right? It's really exciting. Now, you know me, if you've been watching videos for a while, I've always said this actually literally since the start of this channel. I've been saying that technical analysis is king at the end of the day, right? News is great for the long term. That 1% news can make or break a crypto sometimes. But overall, 99% of the news is relevant because technical analysis shows you the full story. Listen, right now when we go look at the weekly candle, it is not looking the most ideal because when we look at the structure, we have a high over here and we are creating currently a lower high, right? We have these lows over here and we are creating a lower low. So the structure is currently still bearish, but it should not be a surprise because literally many weeks ago, already somewhere back in October, we talked about how there's going to be consistent lower prices, right? Consistent lower prices. So none of this should be a surprise. And we talked about how 2026 is going to be the main area when it comes to Zebec and it pumping, right? Um, so that's when I believe Zebec will be pumping. We are still in this triangle type of trend. When we go do something like this, generally speaking, we can see there's a lot of structure here, and I do believe overall, Zebec, it also has to start going sideways. If it's going to go start going sideways, it's going to start going into this big zone over here, which we've been talking about for some time. Right, so things are looking good, things are looking great. And also, when we take it from a different perspective, right, we are still kind of getting squished from all angles. And we are running out of time, running out of space because we can see, right, if I do it from this type of trend, even if I go to the very max, that's like mid to late February. But that's not usually how the cookie crumbles, right? It doesn't really go to the literal max. And in fact, if I readjust these lines, many times it has suggested early to mid January, we will start seeing some type of reversals. Now, here's the thing, we are going to be looking at the indicators because I do know some people like this, right? The MA cross, when the green is above the orange, that means we are bearish and the bears are still here. And we can see we flipped pretty much at the 17th, 18th of October on the daily. We officially became bearish and it has not changed, right? There has not been any other confirmation when it comes to the indicators that we are going to start reversing very soon, right? In fact, it's kind of been the opposite, that we are kind of in a consistent bear trend. But do not fear, right? And if you do start having fears, just really focus on your mental health, and continue to, you know, just focus on what is important, right? Focus on the mental health, take a break from the charts, take a break from the, looking at your phone all the time when it comes to updating your crypto balance, because I'm telling you, that will drain your mental. Listen, right? The 4 hour, right? We can see we had decent momentum. Now we are just engulfing all of this, which is not ideal. And like I said, there's still a couple hours until the daily candle closes. But if we continue this way, then most likely we will be just simply going lower, right? We, generally speaking, will be going lower back to the 0.0025. Now, I do want to mention something that Bitcoin has made an attempt to push higher and higher. But if Bitcoin is going to really struggle around this zone, then we will generally be going back down and dumping once again. So obviously not the most ideal, obviously not what we want to hear and see, but we are, attempting with Bitcoin to break out. And if we do break out, Zbec might not go as low as we expected. But it's why, when you have prime opportunities to be buying, then you just simply have to pull the trigger, right? When we go and look at something like the 50 and the 200 cross, we can see that we did cross officially on this indicator at the 14th of November. So it was bearish. It was bearish, not ideal. Another indicator showing we are in bearish momentum. But to be honest, we've known this, like I said, since probably mid October, if not even like earlier, right? If not even earlier. We can see that sometimes it does cross multiple times, right? So it crosses, it says, oh, we're going to be bearish. And then it's like, no, actually, we're going to be bullish, right? So people that, for example, if they really follow this indicator to the T, maybe they would have got screwed over, right? Maybe they would have got screwed over. And then, just a couple days later, it would have been, lots and lots of gains. But unfortunately, because of this indicator, they would have messed up. But like I said, this is something we always take with a grain of salt. This is always something to give us another perspective, if anything. And yeah, we continue moving on. When we go and look at the RSI, we can see when it comes to the daily, we are slightly below the neutral zone. So not a bad time to be buying, but not the most discounted zone, right? There's definitely been better times like over here at the 0.0022, which is where I got in, right? I got in there and, RSI suggested, we're pretty much at the bottoms or, very close. Like you can see back over here in terms of the pure chart, we dip below the line, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the prime buying zone because we can see actually when we start to get more and more data, buying down here was the prime zone. But when we look at the actual RSI, this zone for the RSI is higher than this one, but then the price here is lower than this price over here. So, always take RSI with a grain of salt as well, right? That's why technical analysis is king, but we just, like I said, use this for more confirmation. We can see we are also below the neutral zone for the weekly. So not a bad time to be getting in, but you won't be getting the absolute biggest snipes of eternity, right? So if you do want to wait and you do trust the RSI, then just wait for it to be going down. Probably at least between like the 39 to 33 zone is where you would want to be sniping in those entries. Overall, I am super, super bullish and optimistic for Zebec. I do believe personally that the next price action move will be to 2 cents. And that's in terms of the swing moves. I'm not talking about tomorrow. I'm not talking about next week. I'm not even talking about potentially a month from now. I just believe that the next swing move, once we get confirmations of reversals, will be that we will be heading to the 2.2 to 3.2 zone. And we can actually see when we Zbec, right? We didn't cover Zebec back then, but if we did cover Zebec, something we could be looking at. I wouldn't really cover from this perspective, from this high. I would have covered it probably from the most relevant highs, which were here. And we can see we actually smashed above the 4.2 zone. So if that's going to be the case, because even though it takes more money for us to go up higher, we have had a lot more adoption over the last 6 months than throughout Zebec's whole entire career. So if we did take that into consideration, then we would pretty much put it from the highs, put it to the relevant bottoms over here since the pump where the pump started. And if we look at the even 4.2 zone, we would be looking upwards of 2.5 cents as the next pump if we were to imitate and pretty much replicate the previous moves. Like I said, yes, it would require more money this time, but at the same time, we do have more money. We do have more partnerships. We do have more things happening for Zebec than ever before. But yeah, that is ultimately though, ladies and gentlemen. I love you guys so, so much. If you do believe in the next 2 cent power move, then, you're looking upwards of even, 7x your money to even upwards of 9x your money if you just got in blindly right now. We will look at the basics, right? We see we rank 153 out of 9,012 active cryptos. We're up roughly 7% in the last 24 hours. We're kind of break even on the week, just minus 1%. And in the last month, we are down 6.5%. 225 million market cap, 8.6 million volume. Not bad, not bad. Still no Coinbase, still no Binance yet. We will definitely be getting listed on those. And of course, when we go and look at something like the holders, we can see we have been consistently growing. The positive news, the news, the exposure that we're getting, the institutional exposure we're getting, everything is just lining up very, very well and very, very healthy for Zbec Network. I still personally believe this project will be hitting upwards of 10 cents on the low end, in my personal opinion. I will obviously have to adjust my analysis once altcoin season starts and once I see the candles. But in terms of pure price prediction, I do believe 10 cents is going to be a zone we easily hit, in my personal opinion. And that would be a 35x if you got in blindly today. That is it, though, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.